I used simple, cheap materials to make a miniature bonsai tree from scratch. I'm using a pipe cleaner to make the miniature tree and melting the fibers. I exposed the twisted wires inside of the pipe cleaner by removing some of the melted fibers. I'm bulking up the trunk of my tree by twisting the pipe cleaners together. I learned this melted pipe cleaners technique from Raven's Minis. She used a very similar technique to make a miniature Whomping Willow for a Harry Potter matchbox. I melted some more pipe cleaner so I could use one more piece of wire to add 2 additional branches. I added one more piece of wire off camera for a total of 8 branches. The twisted texture of the pipe cleaners looks really uniform. I'm making it look more organic and disguising the use of pipe cleaner with some white glue and toilet paper. This is like the poor man's version of paper clay or really small scale paper mache. Some of these branches may be visible even after I add the leaves. I'm bulking them up and hiding the super smooth texture of the wire using some wood glue. I often make a little drying stand like this using some Dollar Tree clips. I unified the different materials and textures using acrylic paint and trimmed the roots. I'm using some hot glue and a resin mold to make the pot the tree is sitting in. This is a silicone resin mold of faceted gemstone shapes. It was included with UV resin I purchased from Amazon. If I was doing this again, I would leave some of the roots exposed instead of completely burying them under hot glue like I did. The pot is a little too shallow, so I'm adding another layer. Cleaning up the squeezed out hot glue looked a little bit rough and messy, so I'm using my heat gun to melt it back down to make it smoother. I'm doing things a little bit backwards and adding the soil before I finish the outside of the pot. For my dirt, I'm using some dried used coffee grounds from a K-cup. I really like how fine they are. I'm adding some detail to the planter and corralling the dirt by gluing on a thin strip of paper. I'm hiding the seam of the paper on the back of the planter. The strip I added was a little too thin. I added a wider strip so the dirt would be sitting below the rim of the planter. I'm using some cereal box and 2 squares to make the feet. I glued the smaller square into the center of the larger square and cut it in 4 pieces. It's best to use a craft knife for this because scissors can crush and misshapen the tiny pieces of paper. I'll make a jewelry box for the miniature boutique I'll be working on to show you this technique in a larger scale with wood. One of my favorite ways of making something smooth is adding wood glue. I added wood glue to all of the paper to give it more dimension and make it look like ceramic or porcelain. I first saw Bentley House Minis use this trick in her abandoned coffee shop project. I used some watered down white glue to secure the dirt, which I should have done before adding the paper or wood glue to the outside of the pot. I painted a layer of white to make the blue paint more vibrant. While the blue paint is still wet, I'm mixing in some brown paint without cleaning the brush between colors. I was trying to make this look like pottery that was fired with 2 different glazes blending together. I watered down some white paint to add some speckles and spatter on the outside of the pot. I finished the pot by adding some diamond glaze for shine. You could also use Mod Podge, nail polish, polyurethane, whatever you have. Earlier, I started adding individual leaves, but I stopped so I could hold the tree by the branches while I created the pot. I accidentally positioned the tree at the back of the pot, so I'm bending the trunk forward so it makes more sense. I'm repositioning the branches a little bit to make a platform for this light green clump foliage. I scored this large bag at my local dollhouse store for $1. You can check out the description for a couple tutorials showing you how to make your own clump foliage. This little branch that hangs down in the front was not working for me, so I used my flush cutters to get rid of it. Just like a real bonsai, I took some scissors to it to reshape the top. I wasn't crazy about how it was looking, so I kind of just kept panic snipping until it looked pretty weird. I filled in the strange gaps and added some height by attaching the trimmings to the top. If I was making this again, I would dry brush the trunk with a lighter paint color before adding the dirt or leaves. I would also leave some of the roots exposed and use lighter dirt or sand to fill the pot. Thank you so much for watching until the end.